This is a 2022 Isuzu D-MAX LS-U Plus. It's a brand new model in the D-MAX range, and it's meant to sit below the D-MAX X-Terrain. This comes with just a few more bits of equipment in it that just makes it a bit more flavorful than the normal LS-U, but still means that you don't have to jump up into the X-Terrain to get a few more creature comforts. And there's no denying that utes here in Australia are very popular, and especially lifestyle utes, as they're coming up in popularity very quickly. This thing is not meant to be the working ute, but it's meant to be something that you can take to work and then come out to play just like today. And with that out of the way, my name's Cameron. This is Product Review Cars. Let's get into it. Now, before I jump into this review, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. It's the best way to show your support for this channel to see more Australian car reviews just like this one. Also, leave a comment. I always love hearing your thoughts, and I'll be down there replying to them. Also, if you don't want to miss out on any future updates as well, make sure you hit that notification bell because it will make sure that you are the first to know when we upload a new car review. Now, let's get into it. So pricing for this particular ute starts up at $61,900 as a recommended retail price. What I think of that price? Well, I actually think it's kind of fair, and that's why I think this is becoming the more favorable model for me, at least in the D-MAX range. It sits below the X-Terrain, which we actually already reviewed. You can check that as a link floating above my head right now or down in the description. But this is the 2022 model, and this is a brand new model for the 2022 D-MAX range. It gets a leather interior, it gets a 9-inch touchscreen. It also gets a bit of towing kit at the back as standard. Obviously your tub, and you've also got a hard covers that you can sort of choose from to go on top at the back. So this thing overall is looking like a pretty sweet deal for someone who's looking for a bit more out of the D-MAX ute, but doesn't really want to spend the money for something as crazy as the X-Terrain, which is pushing closer to $70,000. Now, additionally, this has a smart key feature, which is part of the LS-U Plus trim, and that basically means you've got push button start, and you've also got remote locking by just pressing on the door, or additionally, you've got a pretty cool feature, which means you can jump out, don't have to do anything, walk away, and within 2 meters as your key leaves the car will realize that it's left and it will automatically lock. That's been really useful, and it's worked all the time flawlessly. So that is something that's kind of cool, but those are sort of the little features you're getting when you're spending $61,900 on a Isuzu D-MAX in 2022. So since this ute is a dual purpose dual cab, it's meant to be more of a lifestyle off-road focused ute with the ability to still be a working ute. This thing is pretty cool in terms of some of the off-road features it gets. So walking around the front, well, just starting something that's not really off-road focused, you do get LED lights, which are nice and bright. You've also got a radar system up the front for your radar cruise control. Some nice fog lamps down below, and you've also got a bash plate just underneath the front of your car. And then there's also one underneath protecting the engine, which is pretty good, but if you want to go something a bit more hardcore, you might have to go aftermarket to sort of beef those ones up. Now along the side, we have 18-inch alloy wheels, and I really like how these ones look. Just love the design. Also love the little Isuzu logo wrapped in a little red circle in the center caps. They look great. And also a bit of like a hybrid off-road tire, which looks good too. Also got some mud flaps, we've got some side steps, which are nice and useful getting in and out of this car. And towards the back, sadly, we still have drum brakes. I'm not really a big fan of drum brakes in 2022, but I know there's pros and cons for them. Personally, if I'm spending $61,900, would like to see 4 disc brakes on a ute like this. And around back, to let everyone know that you've got a 4x4 capable ute, you've got a giant sticker here on both sides. What I do like actually is this hard top tonneau cover. I have a love-hate relationship with it. I'll explain why when I open up the tray, but this thing looks really good. You have some badging, and you obviously have this little step to get up into the back. There's your towing kit as well. This thing's capable of towing over 3 ton, which is pretty good, and obviously something that a lot of Isuzu D-MAX owners are probably going to do, especially if you're watching this. And then underneath there we have a spare tire and what looks like plenty of ground clearance. It is a decent looking ute, and I actually really like how this spec turned out. Now, this is a pretty cool tonneau cover. I actually really like it a lot more than the rolling one, only for the convenience factor like this. So if you go to unlock your car, this tonneau cover will unlock with it. So it means you don't have to fiddle with the keys to open and lock it and all that sort of stuff, which you had to do with the rolling cover, which is great. So then you can just lift this up and the gas struts do the rest of the work. Now, you're starting to see the problem I found quite interestingly over the weekend when I had this car and I was trying to move some things. Well, another issue is just what I find a little bit annoying is that the fact to, unlock this, it doesn't unlock with the car. You have to take this key out of the actual physical key fob, which makes it a little bit redundant that it is a keyless key fob, and then that will come down. That's my only gripe with unlocking and locking the tailgate. But once you're in there, you got a decent amount of space, right? And so this tub measures in at a reasonable 1,570 millimeters in length, 1,530 millimeters in width, and 490 millimeters in its depth. The issue that I have is that you can't really take full advantage past those dimensions. It sort of becomes like a physical boot with those exact sizes. It's great, you know, if you need to chuck, you know, surfboards, all that sort of stuff in here, that's fine. But the issue is that you can't drive with this tonneau cover open. So say, you know, put anything that's just above your 490 millimeters of depth, then you're gonna have to either try and fit it in here, which I can see Isuzu's made this, you know, a bit more of an interesting shape, so it means that it can fit some more awkward items in there, but it's certainly something that's gonna be a limiting factor if you wanna stick items up taller than 490 millimeters. So just keep a note of that if you think you like the look of this tonneau cover, but you're gonna be using this tray a lot more with bigger items. But I think Isuzu did a really good job designing its interior, and I still think that holds true today in 2022. There's plenty of places to store items, there's enough technology in here that makes it feel like it's up to date, and obviously, you know, something that's very suitable to being sold in 2022. And it's just nicely finished for a ute that's meant to be something that's, you know, maybe a family car during the weekend and then a work car during the week. It is a good dual purpose interior. Now, talking about practicality, you've got a little storage cubby on the top here. You have another one above the glove box. You obviously had your glove box, but it's taken up by this massive biblical proportioned warranty and, you know, service guide here, and obviously everything you need to know about your car. And then there's some more little hidden cup holders in the dashboard, so that's quite good as well. And you have this center console here, but the center console isn't massive, so you know, it's good to be able to have a couple of different places to hide loose items. Now, this 9-inch touchscreen is pretty decent. It's a little bit laggy and the colors aren't super bright when it's a bit dim, but it's actually really good for just using Apple CarPlay. I've had no gripes with it, although, you know, don't expect it to be as quick as, say, your iPad, but it works really well, and you know, it always connects wirelessly to my Apple CarPlay, no problems, and I've never had any issues with it as such. So I've actually really enjoyed using the screen, and you know, it looks nice being a giant display in this car, and it has some hard buttons down below if you decide to use either digital radio or inbuilt navigation if you don't have your phone with you. Now, below that, these buttons for the climate controls look cool. They're sort of like, you know, work truck vibe in terms of like, you know, the little sort of buttons they have here. They feel great to the touch as well, and I do like the little, you know, white LED display that's up top. It just makes it look a bit more upmarket. Now, some places to charge, like a 12-volt charger or 120 volts, and there's also a USB port and an auxiliary cord still here, which is great. And you have your controls for your 2 high, 4 high, and 4 low for the 4-wheel drive system. Now, this center console area here, yeah, look, I don't really like the gloss touch plastic. I just wish they put this sort of silver material down here, because this is already showing scratches at a car that's, you know, barely got 1,000 Ks on it, and it's showing plenty of dust here. You still have a actual manual handbrake, so that may be, for some people, they might be rejoicing when they hear that. And then these seats are actually really comfortable. I wish they had a bit more side bolstering in them actually. When I was going off-road, I sort of felt I was sliding around a bit, but if you sort of fill these seats out a bit more, they will support you just nicely. I do like the shoulder supports as well for longer trips. They sort of, you know, make sure you feel pretty comfortable over, say, hours of driving. And then we have rubber floor mats in here, which are great, you know, for what I'm about to do, take this thing off-road. It's going to be able to keep most of the dirt off that carpet lining that's running through this interior, which would also help with sound deadening. And we've also got an automatic rear dimming mirror here as well, which is great for driving at night. There's decent visibility out the back. There's a reversing camera here as well. What I would have liked to see in 2022 is maybe a front-facing camera for if you're going off-roading for something like the LS-U Plus in the X Terrain. That would be a cool feature, but maybe that's a wish list for 2023. And additionally, there's plenty of safety features here, like rear cross traffic alert. You've got blind spot monitoring in those giant wing mirrors on each side. Although I do wish the wing mirrors would fold in automatically. Instead, you have to have the car on to fold them in. So, you know, it just makes it just an extra step sometimes if you're used to parking in a garage or a tight space. You forget to, you got to jump in, turn the car on, and close the mirrors. So that's just something I wish that would happen automatically. Another thing that sort of annoys me about this interior is that I do get power seats on my side and bolster adjustment too, which is great as the driver, but the passenger doesn't get it. So it just makes them feel a little bit less left out. You know, for $61,900, I would have liked to see both as automatic seats, but you know, that's just what you get. Now the back seats of the Isuzu D-MAX actually make for a really decent space for 4 adults to travel comfortably. If you need to carry 5, it gets a bit snug. But first of all, having a look at the amenities you get a big grab handle here, which is great for when you're going off-road. You've also got nice soft seats in front of you, so even though my knees are feeling a little bit close to me, you know, they only got maybe an inch or 2 away from the seat. If I do bash into them, it's not going to hurt. So that's pretty good if you're going off-roading, for example. Feet under the seats is a little bit snug, so if you're wearing big boots, it might be a bit more difficult to get your feet more comfortable under the seat, but actually it's not so bad. You have a little map pocket here. You have a USB, which is good to connect to in the back, and then you've also got a little weird cubby, but I'm not sure what's going to fit in there. Maybe some coins or some keys, some air vents, which is very welcome, especially on a day like today. You have an armrest as well, which is good, and so you can put, you know, some drinks in there, and then it, you know, relax and sort of get nice and comfortable. You're also sitting above the front occupants as well, so you get a good view out of the car. There's a little bag hook here which carries 4 kilos, which is, you know, obviously a nice little feature in the back. And these seats are very comfortable. The leather seats are great. I do like how, you know, spongy they are, but they also feel premium, so this is a good addition to having this ute. Now, additionally, we do have these rubber floor mats, which are very welcomed. I like them a lot. Sitting in the middle seat though, it becomes a bit more restricted. My feet are basically very jammed in there, and so are my knees, so it become very tight if you've got 3 larger adults sitting in the back. I'm 5'11" though, and I'm feeling very comfortable. We've also got some live surround speakers in the roof, so we won't be missing out on anything that's coming through the radio, which will be pretty good. And then yeah, I just like the trim here as well, especially on the doors. I like the stitching that runs through here, although the gloss black on the window controls maybe not the best, especially for someone like me who just doesn't like the fingerprints that they attract, especially in an area where you're touching a lot. But other than that, you know, decent back seats for a dual cab ute. You can get very comfortable back here, but as you start to get taller, maybe into 6'3", 6'4", it may become a little bit snug. But at 5'11", I'm feeling pretty comfortable back here. Now what's cool as well is that, you know, if you don't want to put stuff in the tray and rolling around, maybe some valuables, you can actually pull on this tab here, which will unlock the actual bench on the back of the seat, and you can go up here and loop this little hook around the seat, or one of these hooks here at the back, and then you've got yourself some more internal space. And so basically it means that you've got some under seat storage, which is quite good, but then you go some of the bare metal and it sort of floats around freely in there, so be careful for any smaller items that get thrown in there, but at least you have a place to store, you know, maybe cleaning equipment or anything you don't really want in the cabin, or if you don't want anything to be visually seen in the cabin, you can put it under the seats here. But you know, we came all the way out here, so it's time to see what this thing is like off-road and see if it's just as good as it was in 2021. Okay, so we've got the familiar 3-litre turbo diesel under the bonnet that's been updated for the 2021 going to 2022 Isuzu D-MAX range. It puts out 140 kilowatts and 450 newton meters of torque. And so it's been updated to be a bit more reliable, a bit more hardy, and so it's meant to be, you know, a distinct difference between this one and D-MAXs of the past. And so in terms of measurements, we're dealing with a 30.5 degree approach angle, a 19 degree departure angle, and a 23.8 degree ramp over angle. And we've got about 240 millimeters of ground clearance. So that should be enough for us to take along this little proving ground I've got here. I'm gonna whack it into drive, get going, and I'm automatically put this into 4 high, because I found even on some slippery surfaces, the actual 2-wheel drive can be a bit slippery. I'm not too sure if it's like an open diff thing or whatever it is, but I just found 450 newton meters was pretty easy to slip the tires when you're going around a corner and put power on, maybe a bit too harsh. But going along here, putting it into 4 high, everything just becomes a bit more cohesive. Now this is a ladder on frame chassis with leaf springs on the back, so it is a bit more jumpy and a bit more stiff than something a bit more expensive like a Land Rover Discovery or Land Rover Defender. So it's a bit more traditional in the sense of off-roaders, but it doesn't mean it's any less capable. Driving along here, it's pretty good. And look, this is gonna be our first challenge right in front of us, which is gonna be some deeper ruts. So we're gonna go through them, and no issues there. Just a bit of movement and away you go. Now there is a bit of squeaking coming from the dash, which isn't ideal, but that's just something that's, you know, in this car. It's just, you know, we're causing a lot of torque to be sent through this chassis by driving around like this, but part of ladder on frame design chassis should be that the chassis on the bottom should do most of the flexing and the body should stay relatively still. But as we come to a hill like this, I'm going to put on hill descent control. So I should get a little notification here. Here we go, have to hold it down. Now we're approaching this little hill and I'm going to let off the brake. And I do find with Isuzus, they do make a funny noise, like almost like, you know, who's done it sort of noise when it's adjusting the brakes. But coming towards the bottom of this hill, really testing out that front approach angle and going up this hill, I haven't touched the accelerator pedal at all. Now the hill descent control will only work on descent, not going up, so I'm going to turn it off. And there is a bit of a ledge on the left here, which we're going to really test out on this car in terms of sending it over. Ooh, here we go, and up we go. Excellent, excellent. Performing very well. Yes, nice and robust. I like it. So yeah, the steering feel, yeah, it's a little bit light on, but it's got a good amount of movement, so you can actually turn nice and sharp. But I do find that the difference between the splitting the power between the front wheels and the back wheels, it can, you know, get a little sort of understeery. It sort of doesn't like to separate the torque all that much. So if you're turning really tight, low speeds, it's not as smooth as I would like, but it is still pretty good. We'll activate 4 low after we go through this tighter section here. This tight section sort of goes to show why it's pretty advantageous having a dual cab ute instead of one of those big American ones that you can sort of fit through tighter sections like this. And away we go. Look at that, pretty easy, pretty easy. Now I'm just making sure I'm avoiding any rocks, don't really need a puncture, and perfect, there we go. So I'm going to knock this into 4 low, which requires us to be stopped, go into neutral, and then we go into 4 low, so push in, and you'll hear it sort of, there we go. Now we're going to go into drive and get going. So this will feed torque on a little bit earlier and mean that we don't have to be revving so high. And just give us a bit more traction through here. You can definitely hear those diffs whirring a little bit more now that 4 low is activated. And look, this is just one of those vehicles that when I took the X-Terrain through here, it was pretty, you know, there was nothing really to complain about at all. It was just really capable and it did everything that you want a lifestyle ute to do. And this is what's really exciting about this, is that, you know, I could imagine loading this up with people. This is going to the campsite and you look at like something like this road that we're going out on, and if you took your RAV4 or, you know, you took a Qashqai or anything that's sort of like a moderate SUV instead of a ute, you'd be sweating a little bit. But here, because we've got a proper design for a off-roader like this, this is making mince meat out of this little test track that we have here, and especially for the price tag, yes, there are some little refinements that could go a long way, but nothing that I would want to pay a whole lot more for. I think the price is pretty good for what sort of performance you're getting off-road here. Now the question remains of, should you buy one of these? Now, I've obviously gone through the features and I've obviously driven it off-road, and I've come to the conclusion that driving this, at least for the week as well, I didn't really find myself lusting after anything much more than what I have here. Now, you could tell me that the X-Terrain has some mechanical upgrades, it looks a bit more aggressive and maybe has 1 or 2 features here and there, but the LS-U Plus does about 90% of what I need it to do, and I don't really have an inkling of anything more than what it's giving me. So that's why I'm very much sold on the LS-U Plus. I really like how this looks, especially with the hard tonneau cover, and I think this is a killer option in the range, and it's really good to see that Isuzu's listening to its customers and feedback from the media to let them know that a model like this should exist between the LS-U and the X-Terrain. Now, there are some downsides like that hard tonneau cover, which just makes it a little bit hard to load things up into the back of this ute, and I would have liked to see, you know, automatic seats on the passenger seat and stuff like that, and also maybe disc brakes instead of drums on the rear. But then we're talking about something that's looking more like an X-Terrain, which I'm not really desperate for. Those are just some wish list items that I might like on an LS-U Plus, but for the price, I'm happy to take it as it is. Although I definitely probably wouldn't get the tonneau cover from a practical standpoint. I'd only get it as a visual improvement to this car, which it very much is. Now make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on any new car reviews from this channel. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Cameron. This is Product Review Cars. I'll see you in the next one.